Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to this episode of Second Home. Today's show is all about art. Horace says, "A picture is a poem without words." For today's show, we take you to Dar al Funun, an exhibition called 100 Grams of Reality. In the words of the artist himself, Karim Ghidinelli, he says 100 grams is a simple enough measure to get a good taste of something. 100 grams can save you, 100 grams can kill you. 100 grams can get you convicted for life in certain places or could make you really rich. He further adds that his 100 grams are his thoughts. They dissipate, they disappear, but he hopes that before they do, they will ignite or provoke a thought in you. We will also be taking you to another form of art, which is comedy. And for that, we'll be taking you over to Rwanda. So stay with us. Extremely delighted to bring to all of you the artist of the 100 Grams of Reality, Karim Ghidinelli. Welcome to our show.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Karim, I loved your work. The moment I set eyes on them, I was like, oh, this is something really different. I loved the bold colors on your artwork and also the reflection behind that. There's so much to talk about, but first let me start with who do you think of yourself as? The artist Karim, the human Karim, who do you identify yourself as?
I think we're a lot of things, all of us. First and foremost, you identify yourself with the most important job in your life and your mission. So I guess I would be a father and a husband before anything else. An artist, yes, probably number 3, I'm an artist. But I don't particularly, care for too many of those definitions. Let's just say that, I'm a person and this is how I mark my presence, visually. So that's my contribution.
And if I may to ask you, is this your first time in Kuwait?
This is actually my 3rd time in Kuwait. This is my 4th show with Dar al Funun, and so this is the first one I was not able to partake. But the next I did fly over, and so I've been here twice before. It's usually very brief, but I always enjoy it.
And where did you fly over from?
This particular time I came from New York City, and I live in upstate New York, so I drove to the airport and then I came.
And you are from originally?
I'm from Italy. So yes, I was born in northern Italy, in a city called Brescia. Brescia is not really on the tourist map, although it is a beautiful place. You should all go.
Tell me about the reflection. I really like that. You've introduced a lot of glazed surfaces. Was there a particular reason?
The reflection, there's a number of reasons behind the reflection. Let's say primarily, just the most basic of instincts is the fact that we as human beings like shiny things. Right? They attract us, and it's an undeniable force. Yes, it is. From the commercial to the non-commercial to just things in nature. Even animals respond to things that are shiny. Birds will come and steal a piece of metal if they see it from far enough. In my case was, okay, so having established that, then how do I take that into consideration and use it in my favor to create a narrative around it? So the fact that the work is reflective together with the scale of the work, which is fairly large. It's not yet monumental, although that's what I would like to do, but for now it's still fairly large. As you view the work, you're also viewing yourself in the work. As you pass by the work, you're also being intercepted by the frame of the painting, and now for an instant you're living within that frame. So you become very much an active part of the piece. That's the reason why those two elements are so crucial. And then, like let's say, for instance, in the case of this particular piece, this is more than just reflective in nature. This is an actual mirror finish on steel. And so this deals with our obsession of ourselves. You know, that's pretty much where that comes into play. So as we look at this piece, we will all decide, am I looking at a piece of art? Is it a good one? Is it a bad one? Or am I looking at myself? And am I beautiful or am I not beautiful? And that will kind of like, in a relation, allow us to discuss many other things. Are we secure in ourselves? Are we insecure? Do we value the reflection, or do we have more to offer? You know, are we more profound, or are we just surface? So, you know, those are the things that, you know, I discuss with my 3-year-old.
Sometimes we do underestimate our children. They are capable of so much more. And I've always treated children like adults, you know, have conversations with them like adults. And they will give you back things and thoughts that an adult would. Well, so I love how you discuss.
Children have a sense of freedom, free of limitations and free of the ego, so free of the possibility of mistake, which is absolutely incredible. Because if we as adults had the power to recreate that, we would be fearless and we could achieve so much. And really, so many of the things that we're afraid to consider and pursue come from just the possibility of failure. And so we fail before we even try to fail, which is super tragic, you know. It's the worst thing we could do to ourselves.
And children don't have that.
Children don't do that. That's why, you know, the process of growth is so amazing, because they absorb information like a sponge, and they just understand, and they're understanding without trying to understand. They're just assimilating, incorporating, learning, progressing, maturing. They're doing all of those things effortlessly.
When you speak of your 3-year-old, and even before when you're speaking of you being a father, I see a lot of emotion well up in you. You must have a very strong bond with your child.
Well, I do. I think before having children, you know, you always hear stories of when you first see your child, you'll fall in love. I didn't fall in love. You know, I did not. I found it unnatural, as a matter of fact, because I didn't know them. My firstborn is Sophia Ivy. She's actually 4. And my secondborn is Elijah Samir is his name. And he's going to be 2 fairly soon. But from the moment they're born on, there's just this thirst to mutually understand one another, and to really just to study that life and watch it grow and protect it and nourish it, but not just teach, but also just an aspect of learning, constantly learning from the child. So yeah, every time I travel and I am alone without my children, I feel that distance. It's powerful. It really is.
Speaking of children, when you were a child and your relationship with your father, how would you describe that?
My relationship with my parents was, and I often feel guilty when I say this, because it was kind of like a fairy tale. You know, I had the perfect father-son relationship, mother-son relationship, grandparents. I mean, it was incredible. And don't get me wrong, by no means we were not wealthy, but that was absolutely not an element of importance in the way I was brought up. My parents are sort of great adventurers and travelers. So we traveled very, very extensively from more or less the time I was born. So we visited the world, and we always did it together, and we did very unconventional things, and I was brought up in a very unconventional manner, and I think, even starting with my name, and I think I really had the chance to view a globalized world before the phrase was even considered. Traveling is that one thing that just shatters pre-notions and preconceptions. Because now you're not reading about it, you're not taking someone else's word for it, but you're actually experiencing reality for yourself. You are seeing things concretely as they form in front of you. So the reference is direct, it's immediate, and it's absolute. So the biggest gift you could give a child is really, experiencing the travels, experiencing the world and then coming up with their own conclusions.
Speaking of your father, I wanted to go back to the painting in which you have his fingerprints, and I thought that was really interesting. It really grabs your attention because these are real fingerprints?
Yes. Many years ago, I sort of transitioned from figurative work and portraiture to adopting the fingerprint as a sort of focal image in the work. And the reason why it was simple was because the fingerprint is a linear construction. It is closely related to the portrait and the figure, so it is a manifestation of who you are. And truthfully, it's possibly more of a universal manifestation of who you are as a person than a photograph of your face, because that photograph will change, every 10 years or so. You will have a different hairstyle and you will have different makeup, or you will not have makeup, whatever it may be. But the fingerprint will remain more or less similar from the time it establishes itself, not as a small child. But so that linear construction allowed me, well, one, to maintain the connection with the figure, and then two, to create a connection with text. And the text as a form of a continuous narrative, often a personal narrative, that is just a process of discovery. I'm discovering it as I write it, just as you are as you read it. It is spontaneous, it is immediate, it's unscripted, so it's not something rehearsed. It's just a pure sentiment and a sort of a view into an honest emotion. And then I use, in a few cases, whenever I feel like I want to use my own print, then I substitute that with my father's. And that's the one that I've kind of adopted as one of my signatures. I use many different fingerprints because I look into just their aesthetic constructions. Some of them might have a swirl, some of them might have just lines, some of them may have double lines, double swirls. So they're all interestingly different, just as you would consider the difference of a portraiture. But for that one particular painting you're referring to, then yes, that's my father's print, yes.
And would you do that for your clients? Like if they come up with special offers about wanting to use their own fingerprints on the painting, do you do those kinds too?
Yes, I occasionally do commission work. I just recently finished a few big commissions for a person I started out as a client and really ended up as a good friend. And those coincidences are very welcome in life. Your relationship starts out, and then you kind of discover what you and that person believe in and how you approach life. Right. And then you kind of understand that you have a lot more in common, and things just take off and flow from there. So, I'm very happy to say that, you get the benefit of also discovering people and sometimes meeting very interesting people along the way. So yes, I do, it just, as long as it doesn't subtract from the integrity of the work, as long as the clients understand that the client cannot dictate every single rule, there is a discourse, it's a discussion, it's a common decision that we will achieve, the basis of which originates in the appreciation of what I do, which I'm happy to notice when people appreciate and understand my work. My wish to capture the intentions of the collector and offer in terms of a piece of artwork that is comprised of all of the elements that make us all happy, really.
Speaking of understanding and appreciating your work, when it comes to abstract work, do you believe it's left to the viewer or the person who's looking at it and his own interpretation of that artworks?
There are elements that are intrinsically decided by the artist alone, and then there are elements that are added of elements of interest that are then subsequently added by the viewer. I cannot dictate every single move that the interpretation of my work will take. I can tell you what my original intention was, right? I can do that. However, I cannot tell you how you should feel about my intentions. So there is a collaboration of sort. In the case of a painting, especially when you deal, or a piece of artwork in general, when you deal in contemporary art, you may have the benefit of approaching that person and asking, just try and figure out what is the idea, what's the core idea behind this. Imagine if you had that same privilege for every piece of literature, or every piece of film, or every piece of music, sometimes I feel the enchantment and the beauty behind art is best left, sort of mysterious.
In that case, no more questions about your artwork. We're going to stop right here. But I do want to ask you about this very interesting name you have for your exhibition, 100 Grams of Reality. Tell us more. Very intrigued.
100 Grams of Reality. Okay, so my work is text-based. So by the time I finish an exhibition, I would have written and written and written, I wouldn't say endless hours, but many hours. And so sometimes I'm saturated with names and titles and text and so forth. But to be honest with you, I'm usually pretty terrible at coming up with names. But for this particular show, I just sat down and I asked myself, what's the show about? Like if somebody was just reading a pamphlet about it and wanted to understand, what am I talking about? Without saying the political manifesto or the economic times or times of war and peace and so forth. Phrases that we are just covered with on a daily basis to the point where they just go right over our heads. So 100 grams of reality is, if reality was tangible, if you could hold it and squeeze it and feel it, how much of it would it be, and how much of it would you possess, and how much of reality would you need to understand it? So I feel 100 grams of sugar, is enough to make you feel the sweetness of what it is. 100 grams of anything else that you can feel in your hand or you can taste in your mouth is sufficient for you to get an understanding. So why not? 100 grams of reality will give you enough of a view on things for you to understand and consider that point of view and that truth.
Your name, Karim. So how does an Italian who lives in New York gets his name to be Karim?
I was very lucky. Primarily, that's how. It's just, like I said before, my parents have always been big travelers and big readers, avid readers, and incredibly avid readers, like 3 books a week sometimes. I just think when I was about to come into this world, they just fell in love with the culture of the region by whatever exposure they had attained up until that point. And the name just made sense to them, and they didn't see cultural limitations to it. And I will always thank them, because, you asked me how you identify yourself. The first identification we give ourselves usually is our name. That's kind of like how you see yourself. And for me, as when I was a little boy in Italy, I was the only one of that particular kind. There was nobody else that had my name. You may have had other boys with similar names and different faces, but I was the only one that had that one. And not just that, but like, what a crazy coincidence that later on in life I would find myself here, where my name is popular, where my name, when people cheer me and welcome me, and it's almost like my name opens that door to a conversation, because it automatically puts me in a position of friend or foe, and usually is friend. And I felt like, what an incredible gift that my parents gave me by offering me this name of just absolute cultural belonging. It allows me to weave in and out of so many different social realities in life and find myself at home wherever I go. It's incredible.
It is indeed. From your name to your personality, everything you stand for shows very clearly, and we're very happy to have you here today in Kuwait. 100 Grams of Reality at Darul Funur, our artist Karim Ghidinelli. Thank you so much for talking to us. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, my pleasure.
It's now time to have a conversation with the partner of Darul Funun, Lucia. Welcome to our show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Lucia, I love the idea that you promote art in this beautiful place here, Darul Funun. The word Darul Funun itself has to do with art, right? Funun means
Arts.
art. A lot of
Art in plural.
Plural.
Arts. Yeah.
And also this place itself, I thought it was beautiful the way it is made. The central atrium and how it looks into, and the fact that it's so cool inside here when outside it's so hot. And I'm not even talking about the air conditioning. It's just the air quality inside is so beautiful. And you've taken great effort to preserve it like that, right?
Yes. Well, we wanted to keep it very faithful to the traditional houses, to have the courtyard open as they used to use it. Courtyard was very important in these houses. And then also, these houses are made so that the courtyard, when you open the doors, there is circulation that goes in. That's why you know that it is, or you feel that it is cooler, it is, we don't have many for this whole place. We have 3 little air conditioning units.
Beautiful architecture, really. I love this place. And now we have for this exhibition, 100 grams of reality.
Yes.
You have the artist Karim Ghidinelli here. Tell us, how did you find him?
Well, as galleries, we are always looking for artists, and we are looking for diversity, and we are looking for another way of expressing yourself. For instance, the majority of our works are by Arab artists. We promote very strongly Arab artists. But then on the other hand, we also like to show foreign artists. We have had artists all the way from Japan, from Korea, from the 2 North and South Americas, from Europe, from everywhere. Every year we will include foreign or Western artists, all the way from Australia to, let's say, United States, Canada, etc., etc. So, in the case of Karim, one of my collectors had seen him at the Miami Basel, and he came to me and he said, "Look, Lucy, perhaps you should look at the work of this artist." So I looked at the art, and it was kind of new medium, new way. The thumbprint, was
His
over
signature
there.
painting.
Yes, and at that time, the thumbprint was very important in Kuwait because we had exhibitions and posters of thumbprints of all the, let's say, lost people from the invasion. And so I said, okay, this is the connection. And I did call him, and a year later we had an exhibition.
Brilliantly fit in so well.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
And the fingerprint, I really like that idea. I was discussing it with Karim, and a fingerprint is so personal. It's your own. It's your identity in such a huge way.
Yeah, and then if you look at it, every fingerprint has got a story, and then you can, if you take the time, you can also read all the story of that person whose fingerprint. These are all real fingerprints. They are not created fingerprints. And in it, there will be always a story of the person, not only a story of the traits of that person, the habits of that person, the goodness of that person, the kindness of that person. Yeah.
So many things come out in that. What is art for you?
Oh, it's life. It's life. It's your identity.
I thought that would be a difficult question for Louisa, but it was the simplest one.
Can you imagine? Waking up in the morning and looking into empty walls, which doesn't talk to you. Whereas when you have art, you're always pleased. You're looking at it. You're always discovering something new that you had not seen in the last 4 or 5 years. And also, it's beautiful, it's aesthetic, it also decorates. It decorates your walls. And then there is the other side of it. Like people are looking at art now, as a speculation, as an investment. And there are many, many people who are really doing an excellent deal by speculating on artists who are selling very well in the international market, whether they are Arabs or whether they are from anywhere else in the world.
That is true. And you've been doing this, you said, for 25 years?
Yes.
And before that?
Before that, I used to work in companies that dealt with computers. My last job was with Alsana Group, and they were the representative of Apple Computers, and I was their deputy managing director.
Wow, that must have been very interesting too.
Yeah.
But of course,
and before that, there were other companies.
And again, it had to do something with art?
With Apple Computers, it had to do a lot with publishing. But then I was also I loved art, and I did have many art consultants as friends and everything who really encouraged me to go into art, saying that you have a good eye, you should always try. And then, the opportunity came, and we have Dar al-Funun.
And you have your dream job. What do you think of this modern day digital art? If you ask me, I think I'm old school. I love to hold, I love to touch, feel textures like this one right here. You can actually feel the texture. But what are your views on the digital art?
I mean, nowadays, art has become very technical. I mean, there are, for instance, an art which is called inclusive art, which means that you walk into a place and then, like James Turrell, you're in a world of color, you're in the world of light, and this is all technology. You go to the Infinity Room at Broad, and then, you're in outer space, and you go into a rain room. This is all technology that is helping art. Digital art, there is, if it is a good artist and somebody knows what they're doing, it's beautiful art. You cannot say it's not art, it's creative.
As real as it can be. I'm kind of convinced with that.
Thank you.
I'm convinced. I'm going to take a more deeper look with digital art from now on too.
Yeah, all right, yes.
And thank you so much for what you do here at Dar al-Funun, because I believe, like you said, art is life.
Yeah.
And a lot of people get carried away with our day-to-day work, and sometimes you just need to take a step back.
Yes.
And let all this art seep in.
And enjoy your time. Sometimes art could be also very aggressive, but then it is your reaction, to that art. Art is always beautiful, but nowadays it's kind of political. It is showing all the difficulties that people are going through, all the wars and everything. And as I said, art is life, and the artists are chronicling, the era that we are passing through, and how the caveman did it until our days. They wanted to write this story somewhere, and so that it could come to us.
Thank you so much, Luisa, because I know artists do their job of creating art, but it is people like you who give them a platform to showcase it. And the common people have nothing but to thank you for that. So thank you so much.
Well, I thank everybody for, coming and supporting and enjoying what we present.
They say laughter is the best medicine, more so if you can laugh at your own jokes and find humor in the comedy of life. It's now time to go over to Rwanda, where she is covering a comedy event.
My name is Mohammed al-Qahtani. Actually, my full name is Muhammad Abdullah al-Qahtani. Now, let me tell you what's wrong with that name. Muhammad is the most common name in the world. Abdullah is probably, I don't know, in the top 10 or something. Qahtani is a tribe name in Saudi Arabia where there are 5 million people with the same last name. So you can know the combination is very common. You know when you were a child and your parents told you that you're special, that you're unique, that you're one of a kind? My dad could not even say that to me. Because within our family tree, there's like 3 of us.
With me now, I'm happy to introduce to you one of my kababayan. I never thought that he's Filipino, but he is. So one of the act for tonight is Mr. Abdullah Al-Saadi. How are you, Abdullah?
Good, thank you.
Okay, so you say you're a Filipino.
Yes, I am from the Philippines.
Wow, and I thought you're another nationality. So where are you from in the Philippines?
It's a small town called Dipolog City.
Okay,
Not a big, yeah.
and can you tell me something about how you got here in Kuwait? And were you born here or were you born in the Philippines? Tell me.
I was actually born in the Philippines,
Okay.
but then my parents moved when I was 5 years old.
Okay.
And since then, for 22 years, I'm here in Kuwait.
Okay, that's great. So you are one of the act here. So is this your first time or you've been doing it for quite a while?
Actually, this is my first time as a comedian, but I've been in Toastmaster for almost 3 years.
Okay.
Yes.
And so what can we expect for tonight's show?
Well, they said the best comedy is a personal experience, so I'll be sharing some of my personal experience, and I hope the crowd will get the jokes.
Okay. So, but what is it hard to make people laugh?
A lot of people actually complain that it is difficult to make people laugh, but I think you don't think about it. You just do it. It comes natural.
Okay, so the best of luck to your performance tonight, and I look forward to your act.
Thank you very much.
What I will be about to be telling you now, it's 99.9 true story. Okay? I'm not making it up. I was on the flight to the Philippines, and it happened that I was sitting between 2 old ladies. One already fell asleep, but the one next to me was just staring at me. She's dying to ask me the questions. She started with my name, how much is my salary, where I work. And she asked me, do you have a girlfriend? I said, no, I don't. She was like shocked. Oh, really? I said, yes. And then she looked back like that, and then she was thinking, and looked back again, and she said, are you sure you don't have a girlfriend? Because you're really handsome. So we're flying from Kuwait to Philippines, okay? So we took off. She said 2. I said no. She said more? I said yes. She said 4. I said no. 7? I said no. 8? I said no. We're almost near Philippines. 28? I said almost. Then it must be 29. I said no. We are 28 brothers and sisters and a half still on the way. That sounds like a pizza on the way. I have 15 brothers and 14 sisters. We can literally play football against each other.
I'll end this episode with a quote by Thomas Merton. Art enables us to find ourselves and lose ourselves at the same time. We hope you enjoyed our show, which was dedicated to art. Until next week, from the team of Kuwait TV2, stay blessed.